In case you didn't make the connection, I'm the nerd living on the outer rim, and this is my journey. I'm Tommy, and I'm a lifelong nerd from before the nerds took over the world. And today we're making my take on a classic tabletop favorite. We're gonna make Dungeon Ludo. My goal is to get you crafting. Be creative. You know, the robots will be the next to take over the world, so our creative ability is really what separates us from the machines. I'm not the best out there, and I'm glad I don't have to be. I just have to enjoy the process of making something. In this video, I'll share with you some techniques and some of my thinking to hopefully get you started too. I really hope to share this journey with you. Subscribe to my channel and hit the notification button. And now, let's craft. First, I start by measuring and cutting the XPS foam. This is XPS extruded polystyrene, which you can buy in like any home improvement store. My plan was to make 4 equal pieces that together would form the Ludo play space. So I made one piece which measures 9 inches times 6 inches, with the exception of a little triangle on top of one of the sides. You'll see later why I chose this form. I'm cutting this using my Proxxon hotwire cutter. And I had to cut it in two because it's not big enough, this hotwire cutter. And here you see me trim off just a small portion of the edge because the smooth edge is not suitable for texturing. And I am cutting all these pieces in 4 because I wanted to have 4 equal pieces that will make the play space for this Ludo game. And here I'm using hot glue to glue the pieces back together. So it looks like a little house. And here I'm measuring what will be the actual squares on the play space. It's a 1 inch grid, and that will be 3 times 6 squares. Marking first with a pencil and then use my X-Acto knife to cut shallow lines where the grid will be. I then use my pencil to widen the lines a bit. And I wanted the squares to look like stone tiles, and I imagined some of them were cracked. So I carve out some cracks on 3 or 4 squares. Then I use aluminum foil to just make some stone texture on all of the squares. And then I use my X-Acto knife to carve out small portions of what will be the stones to make it less uniform. So far, so good. And I repeat this process on all 4 pieces. The first world I wanted to make was the Grasslands. This is what would relate to the green side of a Ludo board game. I took a couple of scrap pieces of XPS foam to make the home world of the green player a little more uneven. You can use PVA glue if you want, but I wanted to use hot glue this time. But just remember to don't set the temperature too high, as the hot glue can melt the foam. Here I'm just mixing up a small batch of plaster. You can get it in any craft store. And I just mixed the plaster a bit thick so it wouldn't go everywhere. And I just smeared it all over what would be the home space of this world. Crafting is a bit messy, but that just makes it more fun. After the plaster had dried and hardened, I base coated the whole piece with a mixture of Mod Podge and black paint. Then I gave the tiles a second coat of black paint. And what I didn't film was that I carved out the top layer of the centerpieces here. You'll see later why. And the homeworld and the centerpieces I painted brown. And here I'm covering the homeworld and the centerpieces with PVA glue. And I just took some soil from my backyard and just sifted through a nylon sock. I would advise you to buy your own, but if you take your wife's, just remember to buy flowers for forgiveness. And I just took a pencil just to brush off some of the excess soil. And before the second layer of PVA glue, I use isopropyl alcohol. And then I use a mixture of 50% water and 50% PVA glue. And this will lock everything in place. I'm using the same technique for the homeworld. I didn't film it on this world, but I made the stone tiles look more realistic by dry brushing them grey and white. You'll see it when I make the other worlds. And after everything had dried, I gave the whole piece another layer of PVA glue. And what I'm about to do next, that's where the fun part begins. I'm using my homemade static grass applicator. They're not difficult to make, and you'll find tons of how-tos and tutorials on YouTube. You can of course use sawdust or any other technique, but this is how I like it. Cool, right? And to finish the piece, I use a mixture of water and black paint to give the tiles a black wash. This will enhance the contrast on the stone tiles. All done. You'll see everything in context in the end of the video, but here I have it with some scattered terrain and some playing pieces. And now let's turn to our sponsor. Oh wait, I don't have a sponsor. Back to the video then. The next world is the Tavern. You see the stone tiles, I made it the same way, but the centerpieces I want to make look like wood. So I use my X-Acto knife to carve out small grooves and then my pencil to widen the grooves a bit. And this is supposed to simulate wood planks. And here I'm using my pencil to make an exaggerated wood grain texture on the planks. I'm using my pencil to simulate nail holes. For the homeworld, I'm thinking like a tavern look with brick walls and wooden floor. I'm using the same technique for the wooden planks on the tavern floor. For the walls of the tavern, I wanted like a brick look, so I just used my pencil and free-handed some bricks. This is definitely not my best work, and I see now that I should have used individual bricks, but anyway, it's just Ludo. Using aluminum foil for stone texture. For the ground outside the tavern, I wanted a cobblestone look. I just drew the pattern with a pencil as I would have done if it were paper. As I did with the Grasslands, I just base coated everything with a mixture of Mod Podge and black paint and gave a second layer of black paint on the stone tiles and the homeworld. The wood I base coated with cocoa brown color. And these three colors is what I use to get the stone look on the squares. And this technique is used similarly on all the 4 worlds. For the wooden planks, I'm actually using 2 of the same colors. Just dry brushing, first with grey and then with a white. I gave the bricks a layer of a tan color. For the cobblestone, I'm using some darker colors just so I can differentiate and separate it from the stone tiles on the playspace. I painted some individual bricks another color, some red and some grey and some cocoa brown. It looks a bit cartoonish now, but it will be softened down by the dry brushing and the black wash. Here you see the piece finished with some scattered terrain I had to bring the piece to life. The next world is the Volcano. I took a scrap piece of XPS foam to kind of carve out what would be a volcano. And please be more careful than I am when using a knife. And again, I'm using plaster. And I forgot that I had to make a place where the lava could run down, so I just carved it out with a knife. I kind of don't know what lava rock looks like, but I imagine that it isn't smooth, so I just took a tool and just dabbed it around while the plaster was drying, just to see what effect I could get from that. And I'm just carving out a piece of the center tiles to make room for the lava to flow. When painting lava, I need to use yellow, but yellow covers so poorly, so I just based it first with a layer of white. I then used my glue gun to make some strips to give it some texture. Then I gave it a coat of yellow, followed up by orange and red. Then I made some lava stones, texturing them with aluminum foil and painting them black. I imagined that the lava rock was kind of floating on top of the floating lava. Then I dry brushed the lava rock with grey. Here the volcano is finished, spicing it up with some skulls and a couple of torches. And the last world is the cave, or the dungeon. The piece I'm cutting here will simulate the cave walls. the cave some texture and character, I made a mix of PVA glue and water, and I use toilet paper for the dungeon walls. And then I just cover the piece with the toilet paper and soak it with this water and glue mixture. And even though I don't show it on the video here, I covered also the floor both outside and inside of the cave. And when this dries, it will harden up and give a nice texture to the walls and the floor of the cave. And I'm using the same technique here as I did on the other worlds. I painted everything with Mod Podge and black paint, and then again with black paint on the stone tiles. And then I gave it a layer of brown, what would be the cave and the center squares. And here I'm using just a small piece of tape. You'll see later why. I'm imagining this as a water-filled cave, so I painted the center black to simulate deeper water. This wasn't at all as successful as I was hoping for. And here I'm mixing 2-part epoxy, which will be the water in the cave. I'm using blue ink to tint the water a bit. I mix thoroughly and I pour this mixture in the cave, but as you can see the blue color is almost gone, so I actually added some more blue ink after it was poured in. And then I just added a few pebbles. And to simulate ripples in the water, I'm using Mod Podge and dab it on with a pencil. This will dry transparent, so it will look like it's small waves in the water. But I used matte Mod Podge and I should have used gloss Mod Podge, I think. The effect wasn't that good. It actually looks better now than it does after it dries. And finally, the last piece of the puzzle is finished. Here you see it in context with some stalagmites. And now let's see what this looks like when you put it together. As always, there's a ton of things I could do to take the result further, but I'd rather move on to the next project. And I'm really happy with how this turned out. I challenge you to make a homemade board game. Come up with some new rules that you think is cool and invite some friends over to try an old classic board game with a new twist. Your friends will love it. Another shout out to one of my observant viewers that noticed the hidden message in my sawmill video. Congratulations, Kakemagi! You receive 100 XP and are now level 2. Thank you for watching and take care. Lots of love from the nerd living on the outer rim of the world.